Welcome. Welcome everyone. We have very talented list of speakers, panelists and advisors for this virtual side event on the margins of 10th Multi-Stakeholder Forum of Science, Technology and Innovation STI Forum. If you have any questions for the speakers, please feel free to contact them directly. But wait for the session to be over or write your questions in the chat box. We request the audience to keep your speakers and videos muted during the session to see the speakers clearly and hear them properly. The title of today's side event is Emerging Health Technologies and Health Development. Let's get started. All right. All right. Good. Um, eh, in view of the scale of today's global challenges and the great potential of science, technology, and innovation to deliver responses, and global cooperation in STI is indispensable to achieve health for all and education for all. Global partnerships around the STI are necessary to mobilize financial and knowledge resources from governments, businesses, academia, and unfold the potential of all Sustainable Development Goals SDGs. To strengthen global trust in STI and achieve United Nations 2030 agenda, scientific communities need to communicate their work and uncertainty of the scientific process more effectively. This is our today's agenda. Future of education and health is digital in rich and poor countries alike. Technological advances can improve living conditions, but they also often increase inequalities in certain instances, leading to increased frustration among those left behind. Advanced digital technologies are set to change the way we work and live. Scientific evidence may be key in addressing complex global challenges, but science is not a cure all. The power of communication, capacity building, and partnership. International partnerships should aim to close gaps in knowledge capabilities that hamper effective technology transfer. When we work together across national borders, across groups, across disciplines, and stakeholder groups, as we humanity can harness science and technology to the benefits of all. Knowledge and understanding are preconditions for action at all levels of healthcare and other systems. Continuing medical education or continuing education is a lifetime commitment. It requires knowledge of current trends and development in science, technology, and economics of healthcare, and thereby improving the quality of healthcare. E-learning is the most cost-effective way of transmitting evidence-based medical and other educational programs in the developing countries. Women's Health and Education Center, WHEC, provides free access to the educational programs endorsed by WHO and UNESCO to all the least developed countries identified by the United Nations Development Program UNDP. Please join our efforts. We welcome everyone. Creating a thriving world through education and health is a necessity. Governments should place education and health as a priority in both policy and practice. Governments must also make firm commitment to provide free primary and secondary school education to all, including vulnerable or marginalized groups. Strategic plans for STI with clear, specific, and measurable goals to seize the opportunities brought by technological advancements by the developing countries is the way forward. Member states of both United Nations and World Health Organization should perform technological assessments of their national innovation systems at regular interval. Hope in Africa. Our global e-learning, e-health, and e-government platform, womenshealthsection.com, which was launched on 24th October 2002 in collaboration and in support with the Department of Public Information of the United Nations, is currently serving in 227 countries and territories worldwide. We welcome all. We serve about 14 million visitors in 6 official languages of the United Nations. Since 85% of least developed countries, LDCs, about 46 out of 50 least developed countries are in the continent of Africa, internet classrooms in education sector and health sector, and various projects and programs to attain sustainable development goals by 2030 have possibility of success. Women's Health and Education Center's collaboration with WHO and UNESCO embraces a collective approach to forward-looking vision. We aim to mobilize humanity's collective intelligence, which involves youth, educators, civil society, governments, corporations, and stakeholders. All member states of the United Nations and WHO have diverse population by interacting with different cultures and customs. We will and must develop respect for the diversity. Harnessing the digital revolution for the benefit of public education is essential. In 2018, we had launched Link Access Project. It was also presented in 2018 high-level political forum side event at UN headquarters, New York. It was very well received. Link is an acronym for learning, innovating, networking for knowledge. It is an investment in people and in a healthier, safer, and fairer future. This initiative is leading lifelong learning initiatives for a healthier world. We invite you to join our efforts to make this world a better place to live for us all. Now, in summary, education and health reforms the world, and education and health gets the world going. And access to quality education and health with special focus on least developed countries is the way forward. Thank you very much, and please feel free to contact me. Now, it's indeed a pleasure and privilege to have Dr. Ritu Sadana from WHO headquarters. She's our keynote speaker, and Ritu, I think the board is clear, and go ahead. Go ahead. You should have an access. Ritu.
Okay. Well, it's a pleasure to be here and to join this great event. And I'd like to share some thoughts in 3 areas in relation to innovation and healthy aging. I'd like to talk a little bit about just what is healthy aging from our perspective, what our goal is in terms of having not only longer lives, but healthier lives and with more choice. And then the promise of looking at science and technology and innovation and just giving a few examples of what can be done to enable that. So just moving to the first area on healthy aging itself, I'd like to consider what is the context, just for those who may not know, and what do we mean by functional ability as a part of healthy aging, and then how can we accelerate progress? So just the context briefly is that already in 2020, globally, we have more adults over the age of 65 than children under 5. Of course, we are still very concerned about child survival and child well-being, but we should be equally concerned about the well-being of older persons. And in terms of just looking ahead, already in 2020, 2/3 of older people lived in middle income countries. So population aging is not at all only about high income countries. By 2030, 1 in 6 people will be 60 years of age and older. And by 2050, this proportion will have increased to 1 in 5. So it's no longer a population pyramid. I call it a population dome as we move from what usually demographers call a pyramid to understanding the shape of the distribution of ages. But it's not only about numbers. And what WHO has tried to make clear is that healthy aging is the process of developing and maintaining functional ability that enables well-being in older age. And we've produced all kinds of documents and different World Health Assembly resolutions about that. I think what's important is that we consider it having 3 parts of healthy aging. I mentioned that that it's this concept where functional ability is a combination of a person's intrinsic capacity and their interrelationship with their environment. And intrinsic capacity is all the physical and mental capacities a person has. Your being able to move, your cognition, your psychological capacity, the metabolic balance, which we call vitality, and also your sensories capacity. So vision and hearing are common, but there are other sensory capacities as well. Basically, it's what makes you healthy and not about disease. The environments are everything around you where people live and conduct their lives. And innovation is possible in each of these areas, and I'll come back to that in a moment. And what do we mean a bit by optimizing functional ability? Well, people have the need to have abilities to be able to experience well-being. And for older persons, we've identified several. One is being able to meet basic needs. And this is very much aligned to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 25. We also know that there's important ability to continue to learn and make decisions. I'll come back to this one. The ability to get where you want to go, staying mobile. Also quite important to continue to be able to build and maintain relationships and also contribute to family and communities. And contribution can be in multiple ways. Certainly there are other things that individuals could think of, but when we looked at what older persons themselves defined what makes them feel that they are doing what they value or being what they value, these were the types of abilities that were important for them. And I want to end this particular section saying what we've tried to do in terms of thinking through how can we optimize people's abilities. We've come up with a pathway that actually also wants to accelerate progress. And in each of these areas, innovation can be important. The first step is that one should clarify what needs to be improved and set priorities. And this should be done in collaboration with older persons. And if not, we need to better understand what older persons and their families want and nurture the leadership of older people themselves. Then you can identify what are the interventions to improve people's capacities, their environment, and also to understand, for example, do we need to do more research? Do we need to synthesize evidence? Do we need to improve our evaluation of effectiveness? And if so, we need to work on those before we can say there's compelling evidence. Then we can actually design and assess the interventions and see together how they're impacting older persons themselves. We know that many clinical trials in the past would just exclude older people. When if you don't include people in the research, how can you claim that they would benefit from the research or another type of innovation? We also want to look then clearly at how those interventions are actually evaluated and to evaluate them in a practical setting where people actually live and conduct their lives. And to be really clear, when a new intervention is designed, is it clear how it can be done, who is engaged, who provides it, how is it delivered, et cetera, et cetera. And this is important if we really want to be able to replicate in different areas. We need to understand what is generalizable and what is not. Then in terms of accelerating progress, and here is very important area for innovations, is can we increase the scale so we leave no one behind, and also ensure that that we have an efficiency and sustainability. That's another aspects of what innovation can help us. Furthermore, accelerating impact needs a whole range of sort of multi-sectoral issues around communicating, engaging more stakeholders, mobilizing new resources, and promoting technology transfer, and kind of fostering this research and innovation cycle. So we've tried to, those are sort of the generic issues, and I'm going to come back to just a couple of examples. But it's important that we think about what are we innovating for? And I'd like to give a few thoughts on how our lives, our longer lives, are changing the way we think about a lifespan. And that also provides a whole spectrum of opportunities for innovation, whether it's technological, social, or financial, among others, but that we still have a lot of inequities that challenge us because we aren't interested in innovations just for the best off, but we want innovations that actually raise the social gradient for everyone. And then what are some of the investment areas? So much of the 20th century was built around this very linear life course approach, where you went to school, you had a family, you worked, and then you retired. And there was not so many opportunities for variation or support for life choices outside of this predetermined path. Also, life expectancy in the 1950s was much lower than it is now. And all of our systems a lot of our social systems are built on this very linear path. But what we see now is that we need to actually think through that we have much longer lives, on average, and for those who are better off, even greater. We want to have innovations that, of course, make that accessible to everyone, but our systems need to change, and we need innovation in this area so that they can be much more flexible. So each person has greater choice to do what they value, and where we don't focus only on a person's age, but we look at their capacities. If a person's capacities enables them to do things, or they need support, irrespective of their age, we should really look at a capacity-based system rather than an age-based system. And then these puzzle pieces really reflect that if people have longer lives in good health or where they're supported by that, remember, enabling environment, that they can make choices that differ, where you don't only have to first have education and then work and then retire, but you can actually spread things and try out different things throughout your life so that you can also optimize what you're interested to do, but also contribute to society in different ways. But we have lots of challenges. On one hand, we see that global life expectancy is going to continue to increase. The expectation by the end of this century is 83 years on average, where it's about a little more than 70 years on average right now. So that's a big improvement. However, when we look at data where we compare the years of healthy life lost, which is on the y-axis, with life expectancy at birth, which is on the x-axis, and we just do a dot plot. And here it's like 195 countries, and the blue dots are men. It's one country, the average for that country. The orange dots are women. And we just look at it and we see that a very small set of countries, the ones in green, actually have both a very long life expectancy as well as a long health span because they have very few years of life loss to when they're not healthy. So we know it can be done, and that's really important. But we also have 50 plus countries who on average have a low life expectancy and a relatively low health span. We need to prioritize innovations in those countries as well. And it's I think, Rita, in your introduction, you mentioned different continents that deserve specific action. And I think that's something that we should think about across countries around the world. So just to soon close this section, we know also from data we've collected from about 40 countries around the world rather recently, that when we look at people's cognitive ability, even on just one item, such as whether they can remember words a little bit later than when they were told, it's called a delayed word recall test. Based on a person's education level, your response, irrespective of your age, is patterned based on your education level. Age is here on the x-axis, and your score on this delayed word recall is on the y-axis. It's not surprising that it goes down across age groups. But what is surprising is that it's almost throughout the pattern of a person's earlier education matters as they age. We, of course, would like everyone to maintain their cognitive capacity as long as possible. But what we can see is what happens earlier in life and the educational opportunities are really are sorting people into these different health trajectories. So I come back to those different abilities, and one of them was the ability to learn, grow, and make decisions. And there are different types of innovations that can be helpful in this area. One is that we challenge negative attitudes and stereotypes. Another is that we improve literacy in older people, but of course, still also in younger people. And literacy right now is not just the basic reading and writing, but also digital literacy and health literacy. And we need to invest in accessible opportunities for lifelong learning and growth. And as I mentioned before, facilitate choice and control so more people, even as adults and as older adults, can benefit from ongoing educational opportunities, whether classical or more innovative. And in this space, the WHO has this UN Decade of Healthy Aging, which I came up with the idea and developed with the government of Japan, Finland, and Chile. Is that we have four action areas around the first one around improving ageism, the second one on in fostering communities so that they really support older persons and delivering person-centered integrated care that is responsive to the needs and rights of older people, as well as providing access to long-term care, whether it's at home, in communities, or when needed in institutions. In each of these areas, innovation is important, whether it's using standard design in technology and urban planning to support people as they age, whether it's really building much smarter communities and cities that have innovative transportation, as I mentioned, getting around, where you want to go. Very important for adolescents as well. In terms of delivering person-centered care, we know we have a lot of promise in what is already happening around telemedicine, remote monitoring, and AI-assisted diagnostics, and also providing access to long-term care. There's all kinds of social innovations to connect people. For example, rural women living in South Korea, in Republic of Korea, in the wintertime, older rural women don't live in their own home. They come into a community-based setting. They spend the winter there, and then in the spring, they go back to their own homes, even if they're living alone. That is not a very complex issue because it's an innovation that can be done anywhere, but it requires a community network, organization, planning, and community housing. So I think there's a range of type of things that run the gamut of innovation. We also know that the patterns of transitions from that classical linear life course I mentioned is rapidly changing. And the transitions from work to so-called retirement, we have data here from 12 countries, men and women, and the working full-time is in green, dark green, and the completely retired is purple, and all these other shades in between are patterns where when people reach pension age, it does not signify a one-time exit from the labor market because people are moving in and out at different times and in different proportions of times. So here it's a really important area to have a completely rethink on what it means to retire and what are the policies around retirement that enable people to continue contributing, not just as volunteers, but in different ways, given that we are going to be living longer and longer. In terms of this promise of science, technology, and innovation, I just want to end on a few additional slides where we really want to stress that this is a whole of society approach, and that there are, as I mentioned before, a range of innovations. Certainly in geriatric geroscience, there's a lot of really interesting scientific aspects that look at for example, the gut mind connection and how we can benefit from improving different sorts of not only supplements, but medications, etc., to things that really are co-created by older people and in their communities. So remember, I had mentioned this pathway to optimize functional ability. So we looked across all around the world to see what are different things people are doing or institutions are doing, whether they're NGOs, whether they're governments, at the local level or national level. And for example, on trying to scale up in the Netherlands, a small group of nurses had an idea on how they could uh, improve providing home care to people in their community. It started with 4 nurses in one neighborhood, and now they employ over 10,000 nurses in 800 teams. And this approach, Burtsog, has been replicated in many, many other countries. Another example, completely different, also from Europe, in this case, from Italy, it's how do we break the idea that older persons can no longer contribute? They have set up, Auser has set up a fabulous volunteer program which combines research and innovation. They did some terrific work around COVID, for example. And they're based all throughout Italy, and it's extremely highly networked, and volunteers both run it and also participate in it. And then there are other ways where we can actually advance, where we look that we also have to learn. So, for example, in the health sector, one of the big programs all countries have are around non-communicable diseases, which many older persons have, whether it's diabetes, mental health issues, or heart disease, for example. And what we have seen is that we can also learn from programs that are focusing on diseases to also improve how we look at healthy aging. And there's some terrific examples from Mexico as well as from India and others that we've highlighted. And I'm not really don't have the time to go into details, but the innovations that are found are not only in high-income countries. Finally, I think this is just about my last slide. This is my last slide, that in order to make this happen, to have investments and investment mechanisms that enable us to use the longer life and choose how we want to live it, we do need to make sure that innovations are inclusive of older people. I mentioned this means ensuring that we don't have digital exclusion, that we have design for all ages, that we consider data privacy, consent, the algorithmic bias against aging populations, that we really push public policy in shaping innovations toward the common good. That means private sector can't do anything they want. Government policy needs to be able to shape that. We also need investments in research and development that reflect the priorities of older persons. And we work, for example, with the International Federation of Aging, as well as Help Age International, to understand those priorities. And we need solidarity across generations because younger people hope to become older persons. And we want to have that life course approach. So thank you so much for your invitation and for allowing me to be able to share these ideas so that we can move to a 21st century where we can really optimize people's abilities and enable them to have healthy aging.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ritu. And it's always a pleasure to have you on our panel, on our side. So stay on our side. And I trust me, getting old is not funny, and I am getting up there. So I understand. Okay, our next speaker is a brilliant professor from Arizona State University, Uttran Datta, who is physically present at the United Nations representing all of us. So go ahead, Uttran.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit noisy place, so I'm sorry for that. I couldn't get a white place that much, so apology for that. So can you see my slides?
Not, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to present in this important STI side event. I'll be focusing on the health development part. Um, Technology part will be there, but today I'll be talking more like an ethnographer and working from the human communication perspective in the global south. Uh, and This is the part I'll be presenting briefly 3 case studies from my work in indigenous India and with the Dalit communities in India for the last few years. Those people who are represented here are people who are facing extreme poverty. They're living on less than $1 or less than 50 cents per head per day, which is a different kind of a reality which we usually do not see in our everyday life. So the challenges and the other things are completely different. First of all, the resources are limited, linguistic diversity is huge, geographical isolation is case of many places, and also the erosion of local knowledge. So what perspective I'll be taking? I'll be talking in a few minutes. So let's first talk about the South Asia, which is 23% of the global population and 33% of the world's poor. And as you know that many indigenous tribes and many languages are represented, at least 10% of the whole global diversity is represented here. And more than that, 8% of the population of South Asia is illiterate. So I'll be talking about my journey, how we create technologies and solutions with local communities to solve local problems. Okay, it's a different kinds of approach. So as I mentioned that probably previously, is that our goal is to create solutions from the bottom, just not to be a bottom up, which is used many times, but also want to create solutions outside of laboratories, outside of the formal system of innovation, because we need to include people in this process. Otherwise, all the mistrust and other thing cannot be breached. Because if people seeing them involved, included in the process, I think Dr. Ritu just mentioned that we need to include people in the innovation process. But in my case, it's the same thing, is that only the thing is that these people are less accessed, less recognized, their innovation processes are, for example, the government structure that is probably in place in the last 300 years or so. In case of Asia, it may be last 150 or 200 years. Before that, people thrive, people innovate, and we never recognize them as innovators and problem solver. And we never harness their potential of problem solving, being in the poverty region and under-resourced situation. So I'll be talking about that. How can we create solutions with them, even if they are they have less resources and everything. So several barriers we are facing in this process: linguistic and literacy barriers, limited access to resources, limited access to technologies, geographic isolation, communicative barriers, and so on. And also there are skepticism about the people like me who are going to work with them. So that's also trust building, and other things are very important. So the approach we are taking, part of the process I named it as Project Ingenuity. It's a process of how can we harness potential of human ingenuity in under-resourced context. And we are creating solutions co-creating solutions with remote and isolated populations in isolated places. Especially, I'll be talking about 3 solutions today: healthcare, water access, and hygiene, and in a few minutes, which are tied to SDG 1, 3, 4, 6, 10, and 13. Few kind of principles here are direct resource transfer, action research, participatory problem solving, another thing. I have 10 minutes, so I have to be careful. I'm not going to talk like elaborately on each pillar of in theoretical sense, but I'm just mentioning in case you have any question, I can definitely talk about them in depth. So few approaches we are taking: frugal humanitarian innovation, human ingenuity approach, and communication for social change and communication for development. These are the three theoretical and methodological pillar of this process. So I'll be talking about, in this slide, we are seeing various recent work of mine. I'll be talking about Maharashtra, I'll be talking about Mizoram, and also Rajasthan. So these are the few case studies I'll be briefly mentioning today. So in Maharashtra, we'll create some water solution to secure drinking water, because these people have to walk for miles and miles to gather water for everyday life. In case of Mizoram, these tribes were located in the border of Bangladesh and Myanmar. They have very less infrastructural support, almost forgotten people, the last 75 years of Indian independence. They are extremely poverty region, and also this is the region of lots of international conflict. And in case of Rajasthan, it is located in the district of Barmer. There's a community called Sansi community, which is untouchables and one of the lowest of the, even they're lower than the Harijan people. Harijan people used not to go and visit their places. So they are facing untouchability and other thing. How can we create solutions so that they can have sanitation infrastructure and hygiene infrastructure in their places? So these are the three things I'll be talking about. I'll be sharing pictures at the same time. Some of the things I'll be pointing out as health technology and health innovation. So this is Maharashtra, and we are working there. People in this Melghat region, it's in the border of Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh, and people used to travel for 6 to 8 kilometers to collect drinking water, because their existing systems are defunct because of the malpractice of development initiatives. So there were some wells, but this is completely defunct. So villagers has ingenuinely come up with a lot of solutions, including landscape drainage system and all the designs. They changed the whole landscape to protect their wells. They create structural stability to these wells. They also ensure that safety of the wells for the users. They also design future protection from contamination and sewage from the local water sources. And that also create the maintenance mechanism. How can they maintain their, and I'm very happy to report that for the last 3 years is a huge success. And all the like 150 families are getting abundant water right now for the entire year. So this is after the solution. So people are taking water from them, and so these are scheduled tribe people. Their language are Korku, Balai, and also speak some Marathi. And this is the way we started working. It's a messy process, I know, but as I say that this technology is not recognized as the technology we create in lab. It's a different kind of approach, defining health technologies from the bottom. So yes, we need machines, we need lots of planning, etc. So next case studies is from Mizoram, where people created their own hospital by their own way. So basically, we visited all the local health facilities and learned different facilities and different mechanism. How can we create solutions? Then replicate that with local materials. For example, iron bed replicated with wooden bed, the same kind of dimensions and something. And we created the way local people created their building. And so we created the way people can maintain their solutions for long so that no external help is needed. So minimal external help is sufficient to maintain these facilities. We also face various geographical challenges because bringing materials, construction materials here is almost very difficult. And as I mentioned, that alternate materials and usage are a very important part of technology here. And the local nurses and the local doctors were our guidance in this whole process, and the local people who keep the building technologies, how can we create things? So together we created these problems, solutions. So this is the celebration time when they created and dancing. And this is the way we created the hospital from scratch. And right now nurses and doctors are visiting in those places. So this is Mizoram, and the last one is in Rajasthan. The lowest among the untouchables in Rajasthan is Khansi people community. We went to Baitu village, and this is the area where these people are living in a congested situation. So a lot of water logging. Government created sanitation infrastructure for sewages, but non-sewages water, like water from bathing, water from cooking, they're all clogging and they're damaging the whole health infrastructure. So we kind of go villages and find out different alternate solutions to sanitation, and then find out a couple of solutions, and local educators and local communities sit together, and we created a solutions that with local materials, we can create some soak pit, which are particularly used for, in this case, for the non-sewage waters. And then we refined that, iterated that in various villages, various houses. And with these local materials and innovative ideas, we co-create various solutions, and it is easily replicable and scalable. So this is the way we created various solutions. And as I mentioned, that these solutions are all made with less than $3,000 per village. So for like 100 to 150 families, you can just think about like 32 and less than $30. We created solutions for each family in this whole thing. And the health solutions and health technology is built through community. That's why I say that I'll be paying more attention to the health development from community perspective today. It's a sustainable solution model, and it's also addressing social inequality and marginality in a way that vulnerable communities can create their own solutions and make positive impact in the society. So that is briefly, I just want to present my three case studies quickly. And thank you very much once again for giving me the opportunity to speak in this forum.
Well, thank you, Utran. And everybody's running on time. I'm impressed. Boy, yeah, we can behave. Okay. Now I have a lovely friend and guest here, Dr. Shirley Calavani, Director of Graduate Medical Education at Innova Fairfax Medical Campus, Virginia, in USA. She has joined us to discuss nutrition and food sustainability. Oh boy, we can all use that. Go ahead, Shirley.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Wonderful. I'm going to try and share. Okay, great. Let me know if you can see my slides. Is it good?
Yes.
Yeah?
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. So I work at in Washington, in the Washington, D.C. area. My system is in Northern Virginia. I'm going to focus on the United States and in my lecture today, but I'm very focused on nutrition, food sustainability. I'm the chair of a committee through the Virginia Clinicians for Climate Action, and also I'm the lead for graduate medical education. I'm director there. And so I spent a lot of time educating the residents, the medical students, faculty on nutrition and then food sustainability. So I'm going to try to get through this and just sort of, focus an overview about why we really need to adopt plant-based diets for sustainability and health. So I think it's important to first go over, the effects of climate change. I think people are aware that every year we are seeing global temperatures increase. Every year being the hottest year, so 23 was the hottest year, and then last year 24, and we're on track to actually have a record highs, obviously, for this year as well. So this is real. There is no controversy really about human causes and contributions to this. And you can see in a very short period of time how these temperatures have risen. I think mainly people who've been living in the United States have realized that we can see this in our extreme weather situations, whether it's floods or droughts. And of course, people, I think, were very familiar with the recent fires that are across the country. You can see here, this was a picture in my neck of the woods in Washington, D.C. You can see the Washington Memorial there from the Washington Post, and then you can see the Canadian fires, and of course, recently the horrible LA fires. So the particular matter was around us, and there was a lot of health problems related to pulmonary disease from the air pollution and other things, of course. And we have a lot of effects. The main thing that's very sad is that the people that have contributed the least to climate change will be affected the most. And it would be related to food insecurity, changes in, obviously, severe weather, environmental degradation, extreme heat and drought. Also, we're going to have longer allergy seasons. We're going to have vector changes as well for infectious diseases. And I haven't even gotten into the mental health issues that can arise. The good news that there's obviously very great support in medicine to actually affect our way of our educating our new learners, our people in practice as well. So you can see here that even in 2021, we had over 250 journals recommending a change because of global warming being catastrophic for health. And the American Medical Association created a resolution in 2019 that said that we should really teach all the effects of climate change and health across all the levels of medical education. So there is great movement, and many of these organizations, obviously including the WHO here as well, recommend that we incorporate this into the curricula. Sorry here. So one question I get asked all the time, and I had to do a deep dive in learning, is what is the connection between climate change, health, and food? What is the actual connection, and how can we make a difference even on this level? So the first thing is, I think people are very familiar with carbon dioxide and its effect on the environment, being a very potent greenhouse gas. But what is not commonly known is that food is responsible for up to a third of our greenhouse gas emissions. That is really related to food, agriculture, and land use. And you can see here, and this is from a wonderful website called Project Drawdown. And you can see here that it's right up there. If you combine it with electricity production and transportation, you can see industry as well. So it really does have an impact on this fight. Now, this is kind of a greenhouse gas 101. I think we really know our signature greenhouse gas of carbon dioxide. It is 82% of the percent emissions, the main sources, and it has really a very, very long half-life, centuries in the atmosphere. And let's just say it's a global warming potential of 1x. Methane, which is what I'm going to focus on today, is only 10%, but it's only there for about a decade, just a little bit over a decade. And it is also more potent, very potent global greenhouse gas, and about 80 times compared to carbon dioxide. And then you have nitric oxide from agriculture, which we can talk about, and other power plant, and fluorinated gases, man-made gases, which I'm not going to get into. I'm going to focus here on methane because, again, it is still very potent and also not a long time in the atmosphere. So if we move the needle here, we can actually make a difference. I can't talk about this without getting into our environmental impact of animal agriculture. So just bear with me here. I think people should be it should be known as we are transitioning to plant-based diets. So I want people to understand this sobering statistic, which is that 45% of the Earth's ice-free land surface is really used for animal agriculture. Okay. And it's a really, this is a typical feeding lot that you can see here that houses these cattle, ruminant animals that produce the methane in large quantities that we are talking about. Now, what's also not known is that 90% of deforestation in the Amazon and other rainforests is really due to animal agriculture, and it continues to expand as the population grows. And this is a tragedy because obviously the Amazon and other rainforests are natural carbon sinks, and then when we use that to make room for pasture land for the animals to graze and store the animals, or even making the crops to feed the animals, you're turning it into really a carbon emitter. So it's very important that people understand the relationship between that and when they eat ruminant animals. Now, you can see here, this shows greenhouse gas emissions per 100 grams of protein. And this is a fantastic graph from Our World in Data, which is a great website. I would highly recommend people look at this website to understand some of the most recent and substantial trials we have in this area. But you can see here that if you were to look at all the sources of protein, animal protein is way up top, and obviously compared to plant-based proteins or other plant-based materials that are really much lower in terms of global impact here. And you can see that beef is really an outlier here. And still, if I were to just blow this up and look at the entire supply chain when it comes to the beef production, it's not just that the animals are actually producing methane themselves through burping or things like that. It's also the deforestation. You can see that's the contribution here with the land use and turning it into, like I said, a carbon emitter instead of a sink, and then the methane emissions, and which also include fertilizer emissions there as well. And that is in stark contrast to some of the plant based foods there, you can see on the bottom of the graph. I get asked quite often about organic and grass-fed beef and whether that's better for the environment, and it really is not. And it is for animal welfare, but not for the actual effects on the environment, because grass-fed cattle is usually takes longer to grow, and then because of that, they actually produce more methane during that lifespan, and usually need more land for that sort of process. This is another way of looking at this. This is the Plantrition Project. And if you were to look at the standard American diet, and even this would be similar to any Western diet, but even in the UK, where you have very animal product heavy, it would take 2 football fields to feed 1 person per year. That is in stark comparison to shifting to a plant-based diet. And that would be 14 people that you could actually feed per year. And this type of agriculture is highly inefficient. And here, this is another graph for Our World in Data. If you see here that if you have 76% of habitable land that is even potential for agriculture, you would have 46 or 45, percent that is used for agriculture, and 38 is for forests and shrubbery. If you blow that up, out of that 29% of land that's used, 80% of that agricultural land is used for animal agriculture. So to grow livestock, meat, dairy, textiles here are there too. And only 16% are grown crops for food for humans. And globally, that's really inefficient. It only produces 17% of our calorie supply and only 38% of our protein supply. So you can see it's a very inefficient system. And I have to say that, you can't talk about this without looking at these factory farms where 95% of these animals are housed, whether to create dairy, whether to make pork. And obviously chicken is very, very high need for chicken now as people shift from beef. But these are really in very concentrated areas. The animals are under a great amount of stress. Antibiotics are used also not for infections, but actually because they're put in these stressful conditions. And it is really horrible for the people that work there, usually are people of sometimes we have to think about undocumented people that work there, also other people that have lower socioeconomic status and that work in these communities. And there's a lot of moral injury as well. So to our patients, it's very hard on them. And this is another example of the products of family factory farming. You can see that the manure waste decomposes and it produces all kinds of toxins, greenhouse gases, and also antibiotic resistance. At least 2/3 of the antibiotics that are produced from pharma is actually used for animals. Like I said, it's not for humans. And this is obviously also a breeding ground for future pandemics, I'm afraid to say. I think we know this with all the news about the bird flu. So this is a problem when you're housing animals in these conditions. And factory farms also produce a lot of waste, 13 times as much waste from the animals as the US population. A majority of this gets sort of in our groundwater, in our rivers and lakes, and then of course contaminates our large bodies of water. This is an example of the Gulf, and essentially this is a dead zone, and this is about 5,000 square miles, the size of Connecticut and Rhode Island combined. And so when you get these toxic algal blooms, you have areas where the fish just die off because of that. And it's not just the greenhouse gas and land use. We also see that there's energy used when we also just focus on animals, acidification potential and eutrophication potential, which is what I just talked about with the toxic algal blooms. And it's not just the ruminant meat, but you can see chicken also has a significant amount of energy use, which includes dairy and also eggs. So that's not really the solution for us. Now, if we shift to plant-based diets, we can improve all these metrics. But also what's the great thing, and this is why, I did a deep dive too, is I'm a physician, and, we want to improve health with plant-based diets, and it's really the win-win diet. So let's get into that. This is a trial this is a study from JAMA in 2018. It was published. And essentially this shows, looking at 17 risk factors, preventable dietary habits actually contribute the most to the mortality related to chronic disease. We can see it even surpasses tobacco and systolic blood pressure. In fact, globally, it can be attributed to 11 million deaths per year. I mean, it's quite substantial now. So it is an area that we need to focus on as clinicians. And this is an example of the planetary effects from specific dietary patterns. So on the top, you can see the average diet, which is omnivorous diet. And then you get a reduced diet with no dairy, vegetarian. And then, of course, the plant-based diet, you could say, is 2/3 or vegan. And what's very interesting is that even if you were to go plant-based for 2/3 of your meal, you could cut the food-related carbon emissions by 60%. And if you go to 100% plant-based and to cut out all animal products, it would lead to a decrease of 85%. Now, it's not only good for the planet, it is also good for our health. And you can see here on this graph that the relative risk of mortality, which is on the x-axis, and average relative environmental impact on the y-axis. And you can see here that processed red meat, unprocessed red meat is really not good for the environment and also affects our mortality. And you can see on the bottom left, in green, the plant-based foods are really much healthier for our patients and our communities, and also better for our environment. I want to remind everyone that the WHO has really declared processed meat as a group 1 carcinogen. And this is really with strong associations to colorectal cancer. And what we've been seeing, of course, there are more patients that are coming in with earlier colorectal disease and cancers and GI illness in general, but we have to be careful. And also this has been association with other types of cancers as well. Red meat, unprocessed red meat, also is considered a group 2A carcinogen by the WHO. You can see the list of types of meat there. And this is because it has strong mechanistic evidence of carcinogenicity. So we should not be really eating this in great abundance or at all anymore. Now, there have been many trials looking at different communities. It's hard to do a randomized controlled trial in patients when you're looking at diet, because it's hard to control for that for years, which is what we would want, but it's difficult. So it's good to look at populations that really that have different dietary patterns. And this is one of them. The Adventist House study is really studies that have been done on a very on a population across the world that has adopted healthy lifestyles in general. And over time, it has become also ethnically diverse, which is very interesting. This is a study on 60,000 participants, adult participants between 2002 and 2006. And what you can see is that when you're separating out by non-vegetarian or omnivorous diet, up to a plant-based diet, you can see there is a stepwise decline in the body mass index. And this is also true of the prevalence of type 2 diabetes as you go from a non-vegetarian all the way to a vegan diet. And why is this? Well, we talk about protein a lot, which I have a slide for, but really the bottom line is we are really, as a society, when it comes, especially Western diets, we're really deficient of fiber. Fiber is only found in plants, and what's recommended by all the really societies and even the USDA is that we should be taking in 28 to 35 grams a day of dietary fiber. Most people, over 90% of the population, is deficient in this area. And you can see here that it is so important because the fiber in plants actually feeds the microbiome. And that's the important part. It's a carbohydrate that feeds the microbiome. And with that, it produces these wonderful short chain fatty acids. And that actually has great benefits to the rest of the body. It improves, response, sensitivity to insulin sensitivity with or without diabetes, and reduces risks of heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. And if people were to just take several of these, maybe 4 to 5 of these servings here in this group, they would reach the dietary needs for fiber. And we have to talk about protein. So in Western societies, we don't have really a significant protein deficiency, although that's what social media will tell you, is that we are all protein deficient. And there are certain groups that definitely should be looked at for protein, might have different needs. That would be the very young and very old. And that's specifically, especially for patients who are elderly, it's usually a calorie intake issue as a whole. But for everybody else, we have to think about what happens when we do eat a lot of protein, especially animal protein. There is really no storage for that. It's not like it'll be stored later. It's used immediately to create their structural needs in terms of muscle development and other things for cellular function. But then it is also used for carbohydrate needs in terms of glucose and glycogen storage. And then the rest of it is really converted as fat. Converted to fat, which is, you have an infinite amount of storage for that. So that's why there are some studies that show a correlation between a massive amount of protein intake, especially animal protein intake, and weight gain. The rest is obviously excreted in the urine. And this is an example of where you can get protein in plants and how plant-based diets really have the benefits of having antioxidants, phytonutrients, along with fiber. And you can see if you're looking at amount of protein you get per serving, it really is in a head-to-head with animal protein that you get a lot there, and you get the added benefits, obviously, of having plants. And it obviously has been shown to decrease the risk of diabetes, heart disease, cancer, sensitivity, like I talked about, to insulin, and you get a healthier gut microbiome. So how can healthcare address nutrition and sustainability? So I've made the argument that really we should be focusing on trying to shift people towards a plant-based diet for many reasons, but we're really not doing that. And I think the reason is because I think a lot of people in the healthcare field really don't get trained. I know I did not get trained at all in the area of nutrition, dietary patterns. I relied on my wonderful registered dietitians, nutritionists, but I think it's important for physicians as they interact with their patients in continuity clinics or even in the hospital or in rural areas to focus on these issues and make sure people are eating nutrient dense food, not calorie dense food, but nutrient dense food. And I get, what's really important is that people understand that this is in line with major guidelines, is to go plant-based or increase plant-based nutrition in general. You can see here from the spectrum of specialties that people really recommend we do that. And so it's not like we're going against the grain here. And luckily, the newer guidelines in 2025 from the USDA, the dietary guidelines, are going to recommend that healthy protein primarily is composed of legumes, which are beans, peas, and lentils. So less on the animal products and more on the fiber-rich plant protein. And that's great. And they're going to, this is also or similar to the Canadian guidelines as well. So there's really a much alignment here. And as healthcare professionals, as I pose this to my residents, fellows, medical students, and attendings, healthcare professionals really do have major responsibility here, because we still have a large degree of trust and reliance here. This is from the International Food Information Council Foundation and the 2018 Food and Health Survey. We found that this correlated, with COVID, that really physicians, but all healthcare professionals were really considered a trusted source. So we really have a really outsized influence on what our patients eat. And I'll just show you just a brief thing of what we've done at our hospital. We have a sustainability and green team at our Nova Health system, a wonderful team of people and dedicated faculty and friends. And really, we've tried to eat sustainably here. This is a picture of our cafeteria for our providers, which produce about 800 meals per day that include the faculty, the residents and fellows, and our advanced practice providers. And it took a while, but over 2 years, we were able to do a quality improvement project, and we shifted the offerings on the menu to have really alignment with the American Heart Association, and also with the USDA guidelines with having healthy plant-based dietary pattern. And that's exactly what our physicians and healthcare providers wanted. They wanted something to align with that. And we have a powerful role. Again, I put this out because, 1,000 meals, 1,000 patient panel could be 3 meals a day. And that's just amazing what you could do and how we could get people to eat sustainably as they want to. You can see that about 60% in one trial, they said sustainability was important to them. And 78% in another trial say that their eating habits changed as a result of conversations with their physician and other providers. So just to summarize, the health benefits of whole food plant-based diets, it basically has been shown to decrease all-cause mortality. We've seen weight loss, favorable changes in lipid profiles, decreased risk, and even reversal. I mean, that's an amazing thing. Even reversal of plaque for cardiovascular disease has been shown with plant-based diets. Decreased risk of several cancers, and decreased risk of diabetes and insulin resistance, even reversal of these processes, improved migraine symptoms. And also, there have been several trials that come out almost every day. There's something coming out about the benefits of plant-based diets for our health and for the planet. So with that, I'll end. And I'm so sorry if I went over, Dr. Lutherette. Did I go over too much?
That's okay. This was very, very good, and we needed it.
No, I really appreciate that. But there's my email. Obviously, if anyone has any questions or anything, I'm happy to answer that by email or afterwards. Thank you again for letting me speak.
Well, thank you very much, Shirley. And I had met Shirley in Florida, and she wanted to teach me nutrition. I said, forget it, Shirley. I am on vacation. And a guest of my sister-in-law, who's an excellent cook. Do you
She
think
is.
I'm going to follow anything? Anyway, but this was very good. Okay,
Thank
now
you,
we
sir.
have two very talented speakers from Carnegie Mellon. Both of them are from Carnegie Mellon. Who wants to go first, Ganesh or Rama? Okay, let's start with Ganesh. And he's addressing on artificial intelligence and building back better. Go ahead, build it, sir.
Yeah, thank you again, Rita, for the opportunity. I will try to make this a little quick so Rama has a little bit more time. I've done a few of these before, so my viewpoints, a little bit of background. There is sort of the digital divide. I think the share of population using the internet is improving. It's not just whether you have access, how fast it is, whether you have the right device, and so on. So at the bottom, that's what it's showing the average speed of the internet. We have had some power outages. Rama was just saying she doesn't have internet at home, so we occasionally sort of get the overview of what's happening in the rest of the world, right? So likewise, this global health index, I think Dr. Sadhana and others alluded to this. As you can tell, there's a great bit of a divide with respect to global health as well. So all three spheres, right? Health, wealth, and wisdom. We have the haves and the have-nots, which is an issue. Infrastructure innovation is indeed happening. So on the left, I have a couple of different examples. Africa natural gas powered trucks, which is very interesting. MOSIP, so Gates Foundation is pushing sort of this digital public infrastructure. So Philippines and Morocco are adopting the MOSIP implementation, which sort of came out of the India stack with respect to payments and Aadhaar and all that. On the right is more of a schematic generated by Gemini on where the world's headed. As I was mentioning, the DPI, there's no tragedy of the commons. We've seen some very good uptake from India. We also have other examples from Wikipedia to now Hugging Face, right? A lot of these open source models are being put up there. We've seen some very interesting businesses on WhatsApp. Newer AI applications like WhatsApp now are enabling access to things like Perplexity, right? So there is sort of a phone number through which folks on WhatsApp can access modern tools like Perplexity and so on. So the digital public infrastructure, once you can define identity, you can do some banking type of services, you can provide medical advice, you can provide education and so on. This is something that we wrote up around COVID. Dr. Raj Reddy here at CMU had written an article in the late 80s about AI grand challenges, predicting what will happen in the next 30 years. We sort of refreshed that and we came up with this mantra of the people, by the people, with machines, for the people. And as part of that, I talked to Dr. Beverly Wolf, who's an emerita professor from UMass, who had talked about AI grand challenges for education a number of years ago. Many of the goals are still pretty valid. You need mentors for every learner, 21st century skills, interaction data that can then improve learning, universal access, and lifelong and life-wide learning. So now AI and data can power a lot of these goals. This is some brand new evidence from Anthropic, how students are using Gen AI. So you can see things are improving. A lot of folks are starting to use it for collaboration. These are some challenges we had put out as a sequel to Dr. Reddy's article around health, wealth, and wisdom sphere. I won't go through all of it. Information checker. I know there's a lot of fake media out there, hallucinations with Gen AI. This was actually written before Gen AI became popular in the wealth and health arena. Can you again accelerate if you don't have experts, or if you have a small number of, there's a supply-demand imbalance in terms of clinicians, wealth managers, can you have agents, can you have data, sort of make these experts scale their expertise. Any data science or AI project is a triad. It's data, domain knowledge, and tools. Tools are being open sourced, being widely available. Everybody has access to the same tools in China, India, the US. But domain knowledge and data, that tends to be regional, that tends to sometimes have, health data you cannot, so it's mountain or the Muhammad, right? So if you cannot take the data outside a certain geography or outside the firewall, can you bring compute into the geography, into the firewall? This is something I put together yesterday with the help of Gemini. I said, what are some of the tools? What are the emerging economies use cases? I teach an AI and emerging economies class in the fall for Rama's Kingdom, actually, at Hines. And then we have students from CMU Africa and Qatar participating in it. So machine learning can be used for precision agriculture, predictive maintenance. There's a lot of interesting remote sensing work. On the right-hand side is a lightweight collaborator of mine, Dr. Emily Eichen, who got her PhD at Berkeley, is spending a year now at CMU Africa, will come back to the US as a faculty member, I think, at UCSD. But she and Joshua Blumenstock took, around COVID times, the country of Togo said, can we now cast some of the census-related things because we want to transmit aid. Even here, aid was being sent by checks. It would land up in Northern Virginia, while the snowbirds were down in Florida and so on, right? So it became an issue of how do you get aid at the right time. So in Togo, what people did is, based on this research, do some remote sensing, find what the poor neighborhoods are, and then use metadata from the phones to see within those poor neighborhoods which are the most deserving, the poorest families, and then use mobile money to actually transmit the aid and so on. So very interesting use case. I think her research made the cover of Nature. It was a very interesting, carefully done study. And now with Gen AI, a lot of content creation. I'll show you some examples in a few slides, but there is still a bit of a Gini coefficient with respect to media. Obviously, we all have seen the rise of TikTok, which is why the Gini coefficient is low with respect to video. People with modest education still can generate video, can do speech. A lot of tradition in Africa and Asia is oral tradition, right? Like grandpa or grandma telling stories to grandkids and so on. So I think Uttaran has done some work on improving some of that. Gates Foundation is funding some data collection around those languages, but there is still that gap with respect to text. And even in video, the Gini coefficient is not that low. It's 0.74. This is interesting. This is sort of brand new, I think, from the Stanford AI Index report. AI optimism actually is higher in countries like China, Indonesia, etc. It's actually low if you look at the bottom, United States, which is sort of very interesting. There's also a gender divide in terms of AI use, which is another interesting data point. And also, sometimes this is an HBS study, but the domain is Kenya. A lot of folks, entrepreneurs, started using it, but they started believing in the magical abilities, right? So Gen AI was used to solve very challenging business tasks because they thought it was magical. It can be helpful more than it can really be, and so on. These are some low resource examples. So AI-powered radio lessons, so use Gen AI to generate content and then broadcast it using shortwave radio type of things, right? Or if internet's available, internet radio and all that. We grew up listening to shortwave radio in India, so it reminded me of that. So AI-powered WhatsApp math tutor, that's in Ghana, bottom left there. And this is a colleague of ours, Professor Justin Chan's work. He recently joined SAD and CIT. So he's got some very interesting hardware, software combinations using the iPhone to do check for infection, check for certain cardiovascular things, check for eye-related things, and so on. Financial literacy is very important. So financial literacy, health literacy, AI use, they're all interlinked. This is a US perspective from the Atlas of Finance. Many of these are historical inequities. So people in certain poorer communities, and they tend to be, I think there's an example from Hidalgo County, where a lot of subprime, so the darker the shading, that means more subprime borrowers and so on. This is a project we are involved in, domiciled at CMU Africa, along with Professor Edith Luhanga, Professor McSherry there at CMU Africa, and Professor Chipeta from WITS. Can you come up with financial literacy programs using Gen AI? This is some work that I've been involved in. Bottom left is low resource languages and LLMs. So a student of mine from CMU Africa did work with English, French, Afan Oromo, and Hausa, the two low resource languages. The chatbots did very poor. This was with an early version of ChatGPT. And this is collective intelligence meets LLM. So if you have a large group, even in villages and so on, can you generate consensus? What's the role of LLM? So you divide and conquer and have the LLM sort of listening in. This is some recent work, actually, a high school student has done on the left-hand side, along with Vanity, who's more of a health expert like Rama, simulation and agentic technology, how that can help healthcare. This is a recent headline from CNBC. Everybody's talking about AI agents. So can you simulate sort of the right set of agents, and even in sort of low resource settings, what are the key bottlenecks? How do you simulate them, and so on? This is sort of a call to action with respect to sort of the UN policymakers. So open source AI toolkits, public-private partnerships, global AI equity standards, co-designing, which many of the other speakers before me talked about, so that there are no trust and access issues because we didn't have the co-design. We had that from the COVID vaccines, right? There were a lot of trust and access issues. We want to avoid that. Democratize content creation, and then have the local communities verify whether it's accurate, whether it's appropriate for their context, whether it's useful, etc. And obviously, everybody's talking about responsible AI. It means fairness, transparent, accountable, and we want to ensure that AI is a catalyst, not a divider. That graphic, again, generated by Gemini, I don't know whether that's the world we want to navigate towards, but that's one visual, if you will, with that. Let me stop the sharing here. Thank you for listening, and over to you.
Thank you, Ganesh. Now let's start with artificial intelligence and health literacy. And I'm glad and happy, Rima, you are here. Go ahead, take it.
Okay, so do I have 3 minutes or do I take?
No, no question and answer. Finish it. Finish it.
Okay, all right, thank you. Let me just share the screen first. Sorry. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there.
Sorry, it's just
That's all right.
yeah.
Good.
Can you see that? Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to be to participate in this exciting forum. The question that we are trying to address and what I'd like to present today is some ongoing research with collaborators at various institutions and countries on how to build digital tools. How do we bring together AI and machine learning and digital technologies to improve health literacy. So I'll just quickly skip through some the motivation, and I see it, the global burden of disease, which we all know about, and it's not just really the animation actually shows you the progression of global burden of disease from 1990 to 2022, but really the types of conditions worldwide that have really become prominent. And the blue are chronic diseases, the red bars indicate infectious diseases, and the gray bars indicate injuries. And you see really a combination of all of those, for which really we need to build solutions that address all of them. And so we know that, a health literate patient is an engaged patient, and an engaged patient has better health outcomes. This has been established over and over in the literature. And so we do need these initiatives for both wellness care, preventive care, as well as disease-related self-care and management. I have a definition for health literacy here. I'm not going to repeat that, but really worldwide, the statistics are really staggering. At the international level, studies have shown that only 13% of the worldwide adult population is considered to be proficient in health literacy, and the rest have low levels of health literacy. And whether it's in the US, in Europe, in China, in India, the statistics are all similar. So, what is the opportunity that we're trying to leverage here? We see this huge rise in social, mobile, and online visual media and gamification that's been producing large amounts of user generated content. Consumer patients, family members, providers, payers, government are all producing visual media content and incorporating gamification techniques. And of course, if you go look at the statistics, whether it's Facebook, Meta, or YouTube, more than 3 billion users or 2.7 billion users on the social media platforms every month. There are more than 300,000 mobile health apps, just apps for health-related topics. They cover health and medical fitness. And now they are incorporating gamification strategies, whether it's rewards for certain actions and meeting certain goals, incentives, motivational strategies, learning methods, and so on to improve user engagement. So given this context, what we are asking in our research, ongoing research initiatives is, can we design, evaluate, and deploy AI-enabled recommendation systems to better retrieve appropriate user-generated content for improving patient education and engagement and societal level scale health literacy. So just to give you an example, here is a video on how to do an insulin injection. So diabetic patients who are on, who have to have insulin injections on a daily basis, go to this video, and there's a lot of information. Who created the video? When did they create the video? How many views? How long is the video? What language it's in? The title of the video tells you what the purpose of it is. So all this information is available in multimedia-rich content. However, of course, there are all these caveats. Is it accurate? Is it actionable? Does it contain useful information? Is it advertisements, marketing? Is it false information? Diabetes can be cured in 72 hours. So, in response to this, the U.S. National Academy of Medicine started an initiative with YouTube to surface what they call authoritative content. This is to really evaluate what are the principles for evaluating who is producing and putting out this content. And the report was put out by the National Academy of Medicine in 2021. Subsequent to that, they convened a set of an advisory group, and I was privileged to participate in that committee where we came up with these. We identified criteria. We developed the criteria to identify credible sources of health information in social media. And it has actually been published as a discussion paper by the NAM, and it gives you criteria for profit entities, individual sources, and so on. So guided by these ideas, we are asking in our RD&D approach, how can we extract information and how do we evaluate them? Is the information in the videos understandable? Does it provide actionable guidance? Is it inclusive for the population that it's aiming to serve? Does it contain misinformation? How do we measure engagement and how do we measure the impact? That is, how do we generate scientific evidence of the impact and efficacy of these tools on the viewer population? And that's what we call digital therapeutics, the use of software, evidence-based software approaches for medical and mental health conditions that are aimed toward behavior change. And so we do this, we have developed these pipeline and the analytic technologies and the platform to filter a large volume of visual social media content to answer these criteria. Does it contain medical content? Is it understandable? Is it actionable, inclusive, accurate, credible sources, fair and unbiased, and so on? So here is an example of data collection on diabetes related topics that patients are asking on discussion forums. You curate those information by putting it through these different technologies and analytics, deep learning and natural language processing methods to classify videos into those that contain high medical content versus low medical content, evaluate understandability using multi-view learning methods, identify actionable guidance in these videos, look for misinformation, credible sources. So there is a set of filtering criteria that are applied to these 100 million plus videos on the YouTube platform on just health related topics. And then the final curated set can be evaluated by domain experts and then made available as a corpus so that during the patient clinician discussion, it can be provided along with the prescriptions for treating that medical condition. Here are two videos, very short videos on the condition that the patient can really understand. So we think of this as personalized, just in time, contextualized health education. And so that is on the adult side. And we are also looking at, conditions now beyond diabetes to financial health literacy, to patient safety issues that patients should be aware of when they go have interactions with the health system, on women's health issues and so on. Moving on to pediatric health literacy, just a quick overview of the research efforts that are undergoing, we are undertaking. Here are some quick, summaries of highlights on skyrocketing obesity, increases in diabetes, and in children. And so we are thinking of how we are actually designing and evaluating a solution called a digital vaccine. It is a subcategory of digital therapeutics. It's an FDA patented pediatric mobile game. So this is incorporating gamification provides immersive animation-driven gameplays with neurocognitive training and implicit learning, guided by educational entertainment principles, and uses deep learning, machine learning, AI driven, personalized, responsive feedback to make this a fun and exciting engagement for children. And the question that we are asking, going back to some of the issues raised by other speakers, does it really work? Who does it work for? How does it work? What are the underlying mechanisms that generate the impact? So we are undertaking randomized control field experiments, adaptive behavior modification nudges incorporated into the games, and analyzing game telemetry analysis, and created this platform to engage children in the school settings as well as in the clinic settings. All the studies that we have done, all RCTs that we have done so far, show strong positive impact of the gamified app on children's knowledge, on health topics, as well as lifestyle choices. We have done these studies so far in India, Botswana, Singapore, and the US, and have an ongoing study at the UPMC Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh with children with type 1 diabetes to look at, again, educating in a fun and exciting way. So just to conclude in the few minutes, the whole idea is, can we engage in health literacy by design? So the American Academy of Pediatrics said persistent place-based health inequities are influenced by community design practices that perpetuate these disparities. Because these inequities have been created by design, they can also be undone through design solutions. And so this idea of health literacy by design, embedding them in the health literacy initiatives tools in the development of culturally appropriate, precision prevention focused, AI and analytics enabled solutions that promote societal health literacy and patient engagement from early age. So all the tools and the gamification strategies are for children from the age of 4 all the way through to 18. and they can engage in lifelong learning and for future delaying chronic and infectious complications later on in life. So, from a design and policy perspective, the idea is that the healthcare environments focus on cost mitigation and building resilience to infectious diseases, chronic diseases, and humanitarian disasters. We are engaged with organizations to design the gamification, expand the gamification platform for children in humanitarian disaster zones and conflict regions. So, this is another opportunity and imperative to promote societal health literacy worldwide. So, I'll stop there and thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Rima. And like they say, our time is up. So, record.